Good morning, Christview. Anyways, this is last week of September. So we are going to wrap up our month of our Trade of Success for September, which has been having a growing faith, and we've been looking at that. Now, as I mentioned last week, I'm just going to hand raise real quick. How many of you are reading your scriptures at least a few times during a week? That's picking up a little bit more, so my harassment of you is working. Okay, so let me harass you one last time. So here's the thing. As I mentioned last week, if all you do in your spiritual life is based on the things that you do and you hear when you are at this church, you are not going to grow very much in your spiritual walk. Growing spiritually, becoming the person God desires for you to be, finding eternal purpose in your life, and finding the contentment, peace, and joy that comes from having a relationship with Christ will only become a reality for you when you also embrace this pursuit of your relationship with God when you are away from this building, all right? I want you to clearly understand that. So again, let me encourage you, as I did last week, please use the tools that we are providing you to grow spiritually. So these cards that you see on the screen, if you didn't get one in September yet, they're out on the table out there. Next week, we will have a new topic, a new trait of success that we will focus on for October. And we will have a new card with new scriptures and stuff that we want you to focus on so that you can start having a regular routine in your daily walk with Christ focused on a very specific topic. A regular time with God throughout the week is vital to your relationship with Him, all right? It can't just be a thing that happens at this building when you're with His people. Now, last week, what we did is we looked at what happens when you don't grow spiritually. And we saw what very simply happens is this: your life ends in failure. Today, we're going to close out this trait by looking at what happens if you do grow spiritually. So that's what we're going to look at today. Now, question, how many of you watched America's Got Talent this season? That's quite a few of you. Okay, so America's Got Talent. This is like a national talent show that they have each summer. I think it's on, is it ABC? Is it NBC? NBC. So they have it on NBC. And the key to winning this show, it's just something me and Liberty watch we've watched it like the last 3 seasons in the summer, and we never get to watch it when it's aired live, so she always just sits on my lap and we pull out my laptop and we watch it, so it's like good father-dad or daddy-daughter day. So I like it, so that's how I got hooked on this show, is because she wanted to watch it. So we watch it every season, but it's a national talent show, and the way you win it isn't with the amount of talent you start with. The way you win the show is if you're able to progress week to week and build on your talent and get stronger and stronger and stronger. This season, they had some incredible acts. I just want to give you a few of them. One of them was this. Her name is Mandy Harvey. She should be up there. There's Mandy Harvey. She is a singer, incredible singer, and the thing that makes her even more stunning is this: she's deaf, okay? And to be honest with you, I don't know how she does it. She had her hearing until she was 18. At 18, she got some type of virus or something, and it destroyed her nerves in her ears. And she was a music student in college, and she lost her hearing and basically had to drop out of college and all because she couldn't hear anymore and went completely, utterly deaf. And then several years later, her dad convinced her to try to sing again. And she was like, well, I can't sing, I'm deaf. How am I supposed to do that? And somehow started singing. I don't know how she does. She defies everything I know about deaf people because deaf people shouldn't be able to keep their clarity of words or keep their voice because if you can't hear it in your head, from everything I've always been taught, you start to lose some of that ability. She sings incredible. So she was my favorite. She should have won, but America was wrong, and I was right. But anyway, she didn't win, but an incredible artist. And all the weeks that she sang, she got better and better and better, where you're just like, this is unbelievable how she's doing this. And she's also deaf, and you're just going, it just blows my mind. Another one they had was this Light Balance. They were a dance group. They were really cool. So the interesting thing about them, every week, again, they progressed, got better and better and better to the finals, and you saw their finals performance, and you're like, that's incredible. That's a Vegas show, because whoever wins this gets a Vegas show. And you're like, whether they win or not, they're going to get a Vegas show. And they're like these 12 guys from the Ukraine how people in Ukraine came up with this show and this performance that they do. I have no clue. But they did that. We're an incredible group. We're also one of the finalists. The next one, her name was Ketchy. Okay? You look at Ketchy and you can see her, an amazing story. She's got an incredible voice. And just got better and better again as she sang. She didn't crack like I just did. She was just an incredible singer. You look at her and what happened to her, because you look at her and go, obviously something's not right. When she was 16 in Nigeria, she was on an airplane and it crashed. 110 people on the plane, 2 people survived. She was one of the 2. And she was burned on like 90% of her body, and somehow at the age of 16, she survived it when everyone else died. And they came in, I guess, in a crash landing. I read the story on it. Crash landing, and the plane blew up on landing and turned into a huge fireball. And most people were killed on impact, and there were several that survived but then died within the first week afterwards from the serious burns. And she was one of the 2. And then had the courage to get up and sing, and has an incredible voice. And she's just an inspiration, because you see this person that could have given up on life, that tried to hide away, and then she comes out and she's just showing herself and she's singing, and she just built confidence, and you're like, that's incredible. The last one, this is actually the winner of America's Got Talent, Darcy Lynn Farmer. No interesting background story on her other than she's from Oklahoma City. So she's just down the road. So if you can find her address and all and go befriend her, maybe she'll give you some cash. I don't know. The interesting thing that was interesting, I've seen her interviews since, and the first thing she starts off with when they all go, what are you going to do with your money? And she goes, well, I'm going to give a portion of it to my church because they do missions work and they help people that are down and out and stuff like that. So I want to make sure I give some of that because my church does really good work. And you're like, that's cool. So she's from Oklahoma City. Ventriloquist. Started doing this literally, I think she said like 2.5 years ago. Her parents bought her a puppet because she was shy, and they thought maybe it would help her learn some ability to communicate with people. And she just got up and just unbelievable. And what she does is she doesn't do typical being a ventriloquist. She sings. And she can sing better than anybody in this room with her mouth like closed. I don't know how she does it. It's stunning. The last show, the last one she did, she kept progressing. Last one, she did 2 puppets at the same time and sang a duet with them of one of the Beatles songs. And you're going, I don't know how you're doing this. And she's 12 years old. Okay, 12 years old, just amazing. There were many other incredible talent acts on that show this summer that failed to grow, they failed to improve, and because of that, they failed to move forward in the competition. Just as gifted as these people on the screen, but they weren't able to improve from week to week to week, and they weren't able to grow their talent from week to week to week. Last week, we looked at the failure of one of Jesus' disciples. His name was Judas, and his failure to actually grow spiritually. And what we saw at the end of his life is this. We saw a man who was empty-handed. He was filled with remorse and regret, and eventually he took his own life. That's how his life ended. Today we're going to look at the other 11 disciples of Jesus. And I want you to understand they have the same environment to grow in that Judas did, and they have a completely different story though. So their story is completely different than his. These 11 guys had the same opportunities that Judas had. They were handpicked by Jesus, just like Judas. They heard all the teachings of Jesus. They were there to see all of his miracles. They knew his heart, and they interacted with Jesus on a pretty much day-to-day basis for 3 years. So they had all the opportunities, all the same environment that Judas had, yet their stories are vastly different than Judas's. Instead of ending in failure, their lives changed the course of world history. And it's not because they started with more talent than Judas had, and it's not because they had better opportunities than Judas had. They were just 11 regular, ordinary guys. Let me just tell you about these 11 real quick. These are kind of their backgrounds from the best we know. You have, Peter, James, John, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are fishermen. Okay? Which means they're not really highly educated. They're just hardworking guys. Just that's who they are. They're just regular Joes. 2 of them, they believe, were tradesmen. So again, not necessarily super educated or anything, but just middle class, decent guys. That's where they came from. 1 was a tax collector, which was Matthew. He was probably the most wealthy of all of them, being a tax collector. So he is one of the group that you could say was probably somewhat from a more of a wealthy background. And then you have Simon, one who's a zealot. And the only way I can describe a zealot in today's world, we see a lot of them around our culture today, which are the people that their entire lives revolve around politics and trying to convince everyone to be in their political camp all the time, okay? That's what Simon was, except they might even go to the route of taking some violence if they had the opportunity to try to overthrow the Roman Empire. But that's who they were. They were just regular, ordinary, common guys. That's who these 11 gentlemen are. So why is their story so much different than Judas's? It's not complicated to figure out why, and it's very simple. It's simply this. They grew spiritually. That's the main difference. They grew spiritually. I want you to understand, failure to grow spiritually leads to failure. Are you shocked by that? That's shocking. Failure to grow spiritually leads to failure. Okay? At the same time, embracing spiritual growth leads to life change and world change. It's that simple. If you fail to grow spiritually, you fail. If you choose to grow spiritually, you will succeed. You will fulfill God's desires for your life. So this morning, I'm going to look at the different areas of these 11 men of what led to their success to grow spiritually and achieve the things that God desired for them to achieve in their life. And just like last week with Judas, I have 3 main reasons as I research these guys that show me why they were different than Judas and why they ended up successful rather than failure. So let me give you those 3 reasons for their success. Reason number 1 for their success of growing spiritually is this: trust. Okay? They trusted and they believed that Jesus, who Jesus claimed to be, that he was the Son of God, he was the Messiah that was promised, he was the Savior that was to come. They trusted Jesus is who he said he was. Last week, just in contrast, Judas didn't. Judas, we looked at a couple of scriptures and you can tell Judas doubted. The other 11 believed. They trusted that Jesus was who he said he was. And this is a core aspect of the spiritual growth. If you don't really believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God, that he died, that he rose again, and he sits at the right hand of God right now, you're going to have a real hard time growing spiritually. Very difficult time, and I would almost say if you don't believe that, it's going to be pretty near impossible to grow spiritually, okay? That if you're not convinced of that, then all this is to you is maybe it's a good way of living my life. But it's not a life-changing way that I have a relationship with the creator of the world, the Son of God, Jesus Christ. All right, so they believe where Judas did not. Let me give you a couple examples where we see this. In Matthew chapter 16, what happens is Jesus is starting his ministry out. People have all sorts of ideas of who this guy is. There's this guy going around, he's performing miracles, he's doing teachings, some wild stuff, and people are just starting to go, who is he? And some people are thinking he's a prophet, some are thinking he's Elijah, they're coming up with different names, some think he's a scam, some think whatever, he's possessed by the devil. And at one point he turns to Simon Peter, one of his disciples, and he just basically says, Simon, you hear all these things people say I am. Who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? And here's his response. He says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Did it sound like Peter doubted at all who this guy was? No. Peter knew without doubt, you're God's Son. You're the Messiah. You're the Savior. You're the one promised to the Jewish nation. You're the one promised to mankind for centuries. I know exactly who you are. There's another experience in John chapter 6. And I hit on this with Judas' hit the scripture last week. Judas' response, Jesus makes this tough teaching where he basically makes a reference to basically you have to eat his flesh and drink his blood to become one with him. And he's speaking in a spiritual mindset rather than a physical one. And a lot of the people can't understand it. And it says a bunch of his disciples just flee him and go, he's kind of nuts. And they take off. Judas, it says, sticks with him, but he didn't really believe him of who he said he was. But then there's this response in verse 66 of chapter 6 of John. It says, at that point, many of the disciples turned away and deserted him. Then Jesus turned to the 12 and he asked, are you also going to leave? And Simon Peter replied, he said, Lord, to whom would we go? You have the words that give eternal life. We believe and we know you are the Holy One of God. Okay? These guys were absolutely convinced Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that he was God himself. And because of that, it set the foundation for them to grow spiritually for the rest of their lives because they were convinced of it and they believed it without a doubt. All right? That's reason 1, they were successful. Reason 2, why they were successful growing spiritually and successful in God's kingdom is this: acceptance of forgiveness. These were guys that were willing to accept that Jesus could provide them eternal forgiveness for their actions and for their deeds. And this is a huge one. There's a lot of Christians who profess Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. There's a lot of Christians who believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But there's also a lot of you out there that have a hard time believing that God can forgive you for certain sins in your life and deeds that you've done. As a minister, I know this firsthand because I hear it all the time. That we accept that God can forgive some things in our life, but there's some things we do that God can't. And it's too big, it's too horrible. What I did can never be redeemed, can never be forgiven. And you live with this constant doubt that God's forgiveness doesn't cover that part of your life, that aspect of your life, that thing you did in your life. And you live with this constant struggle of going, I'm forgiven, but I'm not forgiven for that. And what that does is this: it makes you withdraw from God to some extent. Even if you don't fully realize it, when you cannot accept that God's forgiveness can cover your sins, all of them, you build some walls up with Him because there's always an area of your life that you feel guilty about that you try to hide from Him. Okay? So what we do is, say, just take Scott Zimmerman for a second. 99% of my issues and sins I commit over here, I can readily admit and go, God forgives me of those. But there's this 1% over here, which are the things I've never told you about, that are over here that I'm never going to tell you about, that God knows, and I don't really think God can forgive me for those. So what I do is I wall this 1% up, and I kind of live over here in this 99% and try to forget about that 1%. But what you've done is you've walled off a portion of your life to Jesus Christ. You've walled off a portion of your life that God needs to heal you from and that you need to seek forgiveness from, and you've walled it off and go, I'm not going there. And all that can do is hurt you spiritually. There's nothing good that can come from that. When you live with that part of your life that you go, God can't reach that part. He can reach all that. He can't reach that. It will hurt you in your spiritual development. It will be a struggle that you have. Let me give you an example to help you understand to some extent. No matter what you've done, Christ's forgiveness covers it. Okay? There's two instances. One of them in chapter 21, again with this guy Peter, the same guy that professed allegiance to Christ. I know exactly who you are. It's the biggest failure in the scriptures, which is you have Peter, who has spent 3 years with Christ. He is the guy that walks on water. He's the go-getter guy. And when Jesus is arrested and he's taken for trial and they have him there, Peter kind of sneaks along, and he's by a fire pit at one point, and 3 times, he's the guy that says, 3 times you'll deny me before the rooster crows. 3 times he is asked, do you know Jesus, amongst this group of people? And 3 times he says, no. And then the last time he says it, it's not just no, it's, I swear to you upon everything holy, I sing curses on whatever. I don't know who this guy is. I want nothing to do with him. I don't know anything about him. Is that a pretty blatant sin? Okay? We might at times hide that we're Christians, but rarely, if you wear the title Christ on you, do you go around telling people, I know nothing, I want nothing to do with him, I never want to be around him, I don't know who Jesus is. If you're a believer and you truly believe who he is, you don't do that. Peter does it blatantly 3 times. Horrific sin. Okay? He is crushed. The rooster crows, he is crushed. Now the difference is, Judas committed a horrific sin too. He sold Jesus out. Judas never finds forgiveness for it. Judas eventually gives up hope and takes his own life. Just goes, I can't do anything about it. Peter's a little bit different. What happens with Peter is this. If you go over to John chapter 21, after Jesus' crucifixion and his resurrection, he goes around, up to 500 people witness him. He has conversations with them. One of them is Peter. And in chapter 21, he walks on a beach with Peter one-on-one. And 3 times he asks Peter to confirm to him, do you love me? And he keeps saying, do you love me? And Peter keeps going, yes, Lord, I love you. And then he says different things like, feed my sheep. And he's saying 3 times. And on the last time, Peter finally goes, how much more can I tell you? Yes, I love you. Why do you keep asking? And what it was Jesus restoring him. It was Jesus letting him know, I know exactly what you did. I know you denied me 3 times, steals people's faces, and I just want to hear it out of your mouth 3 times that you love me. And from that point, Christ restores him, and we know at that point, Peter goes on to kind of be the leader of the early church, and Christ restores him back to his original place within the church and the leadership amongst the disciples and amongst the people of God. All right? And we see incredible forgiveness that God presents him, and Peter moves on with his life, and he becomes the Peter we all know beforehand and afterhand, and he becomes the rock of the church, because he accepted Christ's forgiveness even for his worst sins, and he understood it was paid for. All right? That's why he was successful. The third reason these 11 were successful and Judas was not is this. They were teachable. They took what they were taught and they implemented it into their lives. Everything Jesus taught them, these guys implemented into their lives and kind of changed the direction that they were going. They didn't start off as special men. They started off, as I said before, as just very ordinary guys. Sometimes we look at the disciples and we go, the other 11, put Judas aside, the other 11 were exceptional. They were not. They were teachable. All right? If you go back to the scriptures, it's very interesting. You read the 4 Gospels. Jesus is very, very critical of the 11, and Judas was in it at this time, the 12 disciples for several different things. Let me give you some of the things he's very critical of them. Their faith. Multiple times he's critical of their faith and going, you lack faith. You just don't have faith. All right? Their pride. They're wanting titles. Several times he's critical of them wanting positions of honor and stuff amongst people, and he's critical towards them. Their arrogance, he's critical of, that they thought they were better than other people, and they saw people by classes at times, and these people are rich, and these people are poor, and the poor people don't matter as much as the rich people, and these people deserve honor, and these people don't. They had this arrogance about them, about how they viewed people, and Jesus is very critical of them. Their wrong mindset is another thing he is critical of. They view things on a temporary view of things instead of an eternal view. And Jesus has to smack them down time and time again, and he's very critical of their mindset of how they see the world around them. And then their shallow commitment. There are several times he has to be critical of them and going, you're just not committed. You're not committed to the cause the way that you should be, and he has to be critical of them, all right? Now, real quick, how many of you can relate to some of these? Your faith isn't necessarily where it needs to be. You have pride. You have arrogance, you have a wrong mindset, and you have shallow commitment. How many of you can relate to some of those? I'm right there with you, okay? That's what these guys were, but the difference between them and Judas is this. When Jesus corrected them, they seem to have grown every single time. Were they failures a lot of times? Yeah. Did they do stupid stuff a lot? Yes. But when Jesus came in and corrected them, it seems like they learned. So that was another key aspect that led to their spiritual growth that we need to learn as well is, are you going to do boneheaded things? Absolutely. Are you going to lack in faith? Absolutely. Are you going to do dumb things? Yes. Are you going to be arrogant? Are you going to have a wrong? Absolutely. But when Christ corrects you, do you learn? Do you get further along the path and go, I won't make that error again? Do you learn? The 11 did. That was one of the key reasons that they succeeded. Through these 11 guys' willingness to embrace spiritual growth and to be transformed to embrace spiritual growth, they were transformed as individuals, and then they were used as tools in God's hands. 11 ordinary guys. In Acts chapter 15, we see that they become the leaders of the early church. So when the church had issues in other areas, who did they first go to? They went over to the disciples and said, we need to get word from them. They need to tell us how to interpret different things. They were the leaders of the church. In Acts chapter 4, we see religious teachers. They're called before religious teachers, and they are kind of put on a trial. And it says the religious teachers of that time were marveling at their understanding of biblical text and their boldness they had, because they said they could see that they were just common men. And so you had the religious teachers going, these guys are not trained in the things of the law, and yet they speak with boldness and understanding. We can't comprehend how they got it because they're not trained like us. And they witness the power of God in their lives. In Acts chapter 5, we see that they are whipped, and they are told to shut up about Jesus, and they leave that situation rejoicing for it being an honor to suffer for Christ. Okay? And then they leave immediately, and they go continue to teach in boldness and preach in boldness and defiance of what they were told not to do. They go on to change the course of history. And Jesus is still doing the same thing in people's lives today. It's no different now than it was 2,000 years ago. Christ is still working in people's lives in the same way today as he was then. He takes ordinary people like you and like me who will embrace him and embrace spiritual growth in our lives, and he transforms them and uses them to do his kingdom work. That's the business that God is in. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, my prayer right now is this, Lord, help us to grow.